Ladies and gentlemen, it's me. It's your boy. Welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. I think you guys know me by now, man. I'm like the most famous chess YouTuber on earth. Just playing. But you guys know we got Title Tuesday going on right now. So I got the matchup of the Title Tuesday. I got Hikaru Nakamura versus Magnus Carlsen. None other than these two guys. They go back a long time. So all of my people that are coming from the Philippines, as always, I will say mabuhay to you. Anybody who is coming from Norway, I will say welcome. I appreciate everybody very much for stopping by. But if you guys are ready to go, let's take a look and see what we got for this game, man. We got a famous chess game going on right now. So you will see what I'm talking about in just a second. All right, man. So we got the move E4. Best by test, as somebody once said. Can't remember. Got you. We do see C5, so we do have the Sicilian defense on the board. We got Knight F3, we got D6, we got D4. Kind of running through these moves. I think majority of you guys have seen these kind of moves before. We get into very typical chess. Knight takes D4, Knight to F6, we got Knight to C3, and then A6. And we do have the Najdorf variation of the Sicilian defense, like I told you guys before. Very famous chess games. It gets even more famous than this. After we see bishop going to g5, we got the move e6, we got f4, and we have queen to b6, and this is known as the poison pawn variation. Like I said, for those of you that probably started playing chess ever, you probably have heard of the poison pawn variation of the Sicilian Najdorf. Now, basically, Black is making it very clear. They're like, bro, you know what? I'm hungry. I want a pawn. Let's just take queen takes b2, right? So, I mean, generally, White lets them take the pawn. So we do see Hikaru go queen to d2 and basically says, hey, man, take the pawn if you want to. I'm going to get a bunch of development, homie. So Magnus Carlsen says, don't mind if I do. Pretty much, you kind of have to do this if you're committing with queen to b6. We do see rook going to b1, and then we do have queen to a3. And this is the only move. So for, like, theory purposes, I mean, it's kind of like, it's really easy because, I mean, like I said, Black only has one move. So it's not like you have a whole lot of moves that you have to remember. Type deal. We do see bishop going to e2. And out of the three major moves that you have in this position, f5, e5, and bishop to e2, bishop e2 is the most winningest move. So very, very logical, strong play by Hikaru Nakamura. We do see knight going to c6, knight takes c6, pawn takes c6, and then we do see castle by White, and then we do see the move bishop to e7. Now, we have come to a somewhat critical position. We have a move that was played in the game, but then we also have another move. So we actually have a guess the move portion right here. I do want you to see if you can guess what move White should play in this position here. Go ahead and do so. Okay, so what we actually saw in the game, which wasn't a bad move, but you definitely had an option to play very strongly here, a very dynamic move. The move is f5 in the game, but if you guessed the move e5, you would be absolutely correct. If you are White, basically you have to be thinking like this. You are down an entire pawn, so you kind of need some compensation for the pawn. So usually when you sacrifice some material, not so much a pawn, but when you sacrifice material in general, you kind of want to play very, very dynamic and forcing. So that way you can kind of maximize your position, because you need to play actively because you're down some material. So after we would probably see the move e5, you probably see pawn taking d5, pawn taking d5. It looks kind of scary, but queen to c5 would check. You just slide the king over, the queen takes e5, you got bishop f4. The queen probably slides back over to a5, and then you see bishop to f3. And you are down a pawn, but you're actually down 2 pawns at this point. But, I mean, you have very, very active bishops going on here. You got this rook completely controlling this file. And when you look at the position, White is 100% completely, they are developed completely. And Black kind of still has some question marks in their development because their queen has moved like 14 times, right? Not really, but I mean, kind of close. Anyways, so you definitely have the ability to get in this position here. But like I said, we did not see that. We do see the move f5 here, which, I mean, it's one of the moves. So it's not like it's, a terrible move. We do see pawn taking f5, pawn taking f5, and then we do see castles by Black. And you had an opportunity for a nice advantage in the position before guessing e5. And you actually have the ability to be significantly further ahead if you are in this position here, if you can find the right move. So I have a second guess the move for you right here. Go ahead and pause the video and see if you can see what Hikaru Nakamura should play here. All right, man. So one of the things that you should notice is the knight has a little bit of movability. Another thing that you probably, in your experience playing games, have noticed is this knight is very, very good at defending this king's position. This is the most natural square for the knight. So if you can just get rid of this knight, you will have some options. So the move here, if you guessed it, congratulations, you would be looking at bishop taking f6 and then bishop taking f6 and then knight to e4. And then the bishop, you know, something like this, you might see the bishop backing up. And then we have the very, very nicely timed rook to b3. Now, you kind of have a couple problems here if you are black. One is your queen is attacked. Of course, you're going to move it at some, you know, you're going to move it right now. You also have another issue. You gave up the pawn on the b file, and now you have really gotten a lot of compensation because this rook is lifting, and this rook is going to be coming over here. You have this pawn pushing forward up here. The knight that was protecting all of these squares so beautifully is now gone. So you have a really, really massive attack that is going to be unfolding and stuff like that here. So you also have the ability to lift the other rook. So you got like rook lifts all day long if you are Hikaru in this position here. But we did not see that in the game. If you guessed e5 and you guessed, you know, bishop takes f6, I got to give it to you, man. You thinking on some really nice, strong lines. After we did see castles, we did see the somewhat passive bishop coming back to e3. And basically after this, we basically saw Magnus Carlsen just be ahead a straight pawn. So it's not a poison pawn anymore. It's literally just like, hey, man, I got an extra pawn for nothing. This move d5 basically kind of shuts a lot of stuff down, especially when it comes to this knight, because now you don't really have anywhere that you can really place the knight. You don't really have an attack going on. Even if you try to do something like this, there isn't anywhere that you can move this knight now, since d5 has now been played. We do see rook to b3, but it doesn't quite have the same sting to it. The queen goes back to a5. We do see king going over to h1. The idea with this one is you are trying to track this queen right here. But if you tried to do it immediately with the king here, bishop would have been checking here and deflecting the bishop. And you would have not the same effect. So now we have bishop to b4, adding a lot of pressure onto this pin with this knight. And especially like I was saying before, since it is restricted, you know, from its movement, you especially can't move it now because it's pinned to the queen. They did not do that. That is an accident. Mouse slip. But the pressure is really mounting on white. We do see a3. We got bishop taking c3, queen taking c3, queen taking c3, rook taking c3. And there's a couple things I want to kind of say about this position. One, you are Hikaru Nakamura. You're down a pawn against Magnus Carlsen, you know, one of the arguably best players in the world. And you have just traded queens down into an endgame. So if you're Magnus Carlsen is happy. He's like, yes, yes. Like I got a pawn. Now I've traded down into an endgame. This is going to be great. It doesn't really matter who I'm playing. Basically, if you're Magnus Carlsen. But we do have this position right here, and I mean, it's very, very preferable if you are black in this position. As you guys can see the bar, you know, because of the facts that I just mentioned, I mean, you pretty much kind of have everything going on if you are on the black side. So we do see rook to e8 first, attacking these two bishops. More importantly, something that you have to see, which Hikaru does see, is the move d4 can come. And the problem is this bishop is undefended. So I tell you guys all the time, a lot of tactics, a lot of like advantage grabbing comes based off of if you are having undefended pieces in your position, or you can find them in your opponent's position. There's usually tactics around that. But like I said, we did see rook to e8. The bishop goes back to d1. Now the undefended bishop is defended. We do see bishop to d7, and then we have bishop to g1. Not super ideal. I mean, you're basically kind of undeveloping all of your pieces at this point. So you're kind of making them somewhat passive. So you definitely want to make sure in your games that you're finding very, very active positions for your pieces, even if you're having to retreat them. So we do see knight going down e4. Really nice attacking move right here. You got to be careful because, I mean, rook b3 can look very appetizing. But after knight to d2, you would be forking these two pieces, and that's not where you want to be at. We do see rook going over to e3. We got knight going down to d2, attacking the rook on f1. We got rook lining up here. Rook takes, and then we do see bishop taking f5. And Magnus Carlsen is like, bro, I got two pawns. I'm to the good. Like, I'm not hungry no more. I don't have to snack on nothing. Put this down just a little bit because I'm a little bit short, bro. Okay, cool. Bishop takes f5. We do see rook going up to e7, which is actually a pretty powerful move. You know, you always want to have rooks on the 7th. We do see knight going to c4 because Magnus Carlsen is not satisfied with just 2 pawns. He's like, why not grab 3, bro? I mean, you know, hey, if you can grab all your opponent's pawns, I mean, why not, dog? I mean, just do it, bro. You know what I'm saying? Like Nike says. We do see rook going to c7 and then rook to c8. And, you know, in this position, like I was telling you guys before, you don't really ideally want to be trading pieces, but it's like where do you kind of go with this rook? Like, you've already moved it up here, then you moved it over here. You don't really want to move it another time because you're just going to be way too passive. So it's kind of best to trade at this point. Rook takes, bishop takes, and then you do see bishop to c5. Just in time to protect this pawn over here. You don't really want to lose that one because you got an outside pass pawn going on. We do see bishop going to f5. Bishop goes to e2. We got bishop taking c2, bishop taking c4, and then pawn taking c4. And we have reached kind of somewhat a critical position here. Now, as you guys may or may not know, opposite color bishops are very notoriously drawn. If you have equal material, even up a pawn or even up 2 pawns, a majority of the time, I mean, you still can manage a draw. Even in situations where you are down 3 entire pawns, you still can somewhat manage a draw, but there's some conditions. Number 1, you need to, so there's 2 basically kind of you know, themes in these types of endgames. If you can successfully create a fortress and a blockade of the pawns and basically make it to where they can't really move forward, then you can maybe secure the draw. It is very, very hard to do when you are down 3 pawns, though. You have to have some really good technique. The unfortunate news for Hikaru is that he's playing arguably the best in-game player in the history of the game. So, I mean, even though it's a draw, I mean, you know, Magnus turns draws into wins all the time, bro. So anyways, we do have opposite color bishops being down 3 pawns. So, I mean, like I said, those types of things are what Hikaru was wanting to try to do. He's going to make sure that he puts these pawns opposite the color that Black's bishop is sitting on. And he's going to try to see if he can create this blockade and fortress. But it is very, very hard, if not impossible to do. So let's move forward. King goes to g1. You want to try to make sure that you're centralized with your king and that you're kind of watching this pawn here, because this pawn looks kind of dangerous. We do see f6. We got king to f2, bishop e4. We do see bishop down to d4. We got king to f7, bishop to c3, and that is starting some of the blockading of the pieces. This is actually a really good place to start because, I mean, these pawns, if they're kind of up against each other, they can't really go anywhere. So this pawn is kind of holding this one. This bishop's kind of holding this one. But this king kind of has a lot of work to do with these 3 pawns right here. We do see g5 and we got g3. So what I mentioned before is a thing. Now we have all the pawns opposite this colored bishop. So, you know, all our pawns are safe for the moment. We do see king to e6. King goes to e3. We got bishop to d3. We got bishop to b2. f5. We got the bishop coming back to c3. We got h5. Now, this is the main problem that you have in the position if you are Hikaru. So you have these pawns that are very, very spread out across the board. You're going to be pretty much creating a pass pawn with this pawn majority over here. And at some point, you're probably going to be able to, you know, kind of sacrifice one of these pawns to get the other pawn rolling down. So you're kind of in a position where you're stretched a little bit too thin. And that is basically the ingredient that Magnus Carlsen needs to try to win this kind of endgame. We got bishop going back to b2, bishop e4, bishop to c3, bishop d5, bishop a5. We got f4 with check, pawn takes, and then the pawn goes forward. And now what Magnus has just done is he has put 2 pawns against 1 pawn. He's very effectively going to be able to, you know, blockade this pawn so it can't go any more forward. But he is threatening making a pass pawn over here. And then he already has a pass pawn here or here. So with those pawns being spread so far apart, it's really, really, really hard, if not impossible, for you to be able to hold this kind of an endgame. And it is just kind of getting worse and worse as we go on. The bishop goes down. We do see king to f5. We do see bishop to d3. We got c5, kind of wasting a tempo. We got bishop down to e1, and then we do see the move c3. Now, it's very, very unfortunate because, like I said, I mean, you're pretty much going to get rid of this pawn or this pawn right here, and you are just going to be just making sure that this pawn can score a touchdown down here. The bishop probably is going to have to give itself up at some point, if that's a thing. But we are using this pawn right now to try to decoy this bishop because we really want h4 to come. And like I said, that big threat of creating this pass pawn over here. Getting these pawns as far advanced as possible is the name of the game. We do see bishop taking here. We got h4. We got king down to f2. King takes f4. We got bishop to d2 with check. We got king up to f5. And this is very surprising. I know it's going to be crazy. Bishop to g5. And you're thinking, bro, what? Why are we putting bishop to g5? Like, what is this, a trick? It's not a trick. I think it's either a pre-move or it has to be like a mouse slip. But I mean, Hikaru was already kind of like, man, I'm already lost at this point anyway. I don't know what he thought Magnus was going to be doing in this position. Maybe he thought he was going to kind of like move over here somewhere, and then he kind of had a threat on this pawn right here. But it is in this position that Hikaru Nakamura resigns the game. Now, to show you guys kind of an example of what could happen if, let's say, the bishop wasn't thrown away, right? So let's just say, for example, we got king back to f5. The computer is basically saying it doesn't really matter what you do here, but let's just take a random move, for example. Bishop down to e1. I know this move does not make any sense to you. You're thinking like, what in the world is this exactly? I don't know either, bro. I mean, the computer's like, bro, just throw one of these random moves out there for no reason. Like, it literally just says do whatever you want. It's pretty much going to kind of be the same idea. So one of the ideas is g3. Pawn takes, and then we have the move h3 right here. King would probably go down to like g1, and then we got king to e4. And like I said, the problem is you have two extremely far past pawns, and there is not going to be a way for you to be able to stop this pawn and stop this pawn at the same time. And this king is just absolutely way too active. You know, you pretty much can play bishop here if you want to, if it's really necessary to protect this pawn at some point. And then the king is basically going to force this bishop to give itself up. So you're going to be playing an endgame where you're down a bishop. And, I mean, the pawns can be even, but you know, Magnus Carlsen has a bishop and a king versus just your king by itself. And that is a very scary situation to be in, man. I don't know if you played Magnus Carlsen recently. You know, in the times that I played him, no, I'll play it. I ain't never played Magnus, bro. If I was to play him, this isn't the position that I like to play against him in at all, bro. So I appreciate everybody very much for coming by. Let me think about my little languages. All my people in the Philippines, as always, maraming salamat, the king makaibigan, po sa nanonood inga king ma video. I appreciate you guys very much. Anybody that is coming from Norway, I will say God Morgan and Tusen Tak. I really appreciate you guys very much for stopping by. And anybody else from around the world, I appreciate you guys rolling through, and I'm gonna catch you guys next time.